The best leaders in the world are the people who ask the best questions in the room. You gotta have a really impactful why. You gotta have an insightful why. You gotta be able to pinpoint it back to a person, a story, a testimony, whatever it is. Having a solid why and aligning your actions and your teams around that tends to set leaders apart. The more complex you sound, what ends up happening is people don't understand you. Clarity is the point. We want to be able to speak with clarity of what is most important right now. Values are not what we're seeking to become. Values are who we are. So can we please just be authentic? If you want to be the best leader in every single room you ever walk in, this is how you do it. You become a great listener and you become a great defender of people in rooms where you're not the primary leader. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Conversations. This week we are going to be walking through 7 questions you should be asking as a leader. I think leaders should be the people paving the way with asking questions. I think asking questions, one, is the way Jesus led, and I believe the best leaders in the world are the people who ask the best questions in the room. So we're going to go over 7 questions that you should be asking potentially yourself, your team, anything in your context and sphere of influence. I think you should be going through these 7 questions. Again, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I'm really excited to jump into these 7 questions, and feel free to change these up however you think would be best for you and your team. These are just questions that I believe have impacted my life and could absolutely impact yours and your sphere of influence. Number 1, why do we exist and how am I aligning my actions with that purpose? The point of this one is obviously to focus on vision and your personal contribution. So a lot of times what we do is we have these mission statements or we have vision statements that have been on the wall for 10 plus years, and it's just something that just you almost get familiar with, right? Like there tends to be a sense of, yeah, that's just why we exist. We're a church because blank. We exist to do blank. And it just becomes a statement, less of a conviction. And I just believe it's really important to constantly go back to this question. Think of this as in the context of your small group that you lead. Why do we exist? What is the point of this? Why are we doing something when potentially somebody else is already doing the same thing? Somebody else has a church, somebody else has a small group in our church. Why do we have one? Why do we exist? And that follow-up question is just as important. How am I aligning my actions with that? Because again, if you get the right why, the right framework, then what ends up happening is now how you can play your part. Or at least you can start brainstorming and ideating on that concept of, man, how do I align my actions going into 2025 or being in 2025 even? How do I align my actions with that why? Because again, everything starts around that why we exist, why are we here, why am I here? And again, it doesn't just have to be with teams, it can be with you. Why do you exist? Why are you a leader? Why are you called? Why did God choose you? And going back in retrospect, obviously looking back, all that you've done as a company, all that you've done as a team, and understanding that most of the time when the why is high, the cost is low. So when your why is high, what ends up happening is the cost is low. So that's that follow-up question of how am I aligning my actions with that purpose? It tends to be a lot easier to give a context to that when the why is actually high enough. You got to have a really impactful why. You got to have an insightful why. You got to be able to pinpoint it back to a person, a story, a testimony, whatever it is. Having a solid why and aligning your actions and your teams around that tends to set leaders apart. Because again, most people have their own version of a why. We never graduate or get sick of consistently sharing the vision and the mission and explaining why we exist. This is why we exist. And you don't have to wait for a moment for that, by the way. When it happens, point it out. When somebody finds a connect group, when somebody joins a team, when you land the biggest client you've ever done, make sure people know this is why we exist. We exist because blank, and this is how you can play your part. Number 2, What is most important right now, and what values do we need to succeed? This would be an interesting one, and this is always telling to me as I'm having conversations with leaders across the world at this point and asking this question, but not just asking it to the primary leader, ask it to all the leaders and see if you get the same answer. Because potentially the same answer, which produces what you could say would just be unity, if everybody says the same thing, that's the right answer. Because it's important to them and there is unity around that. If you ask, hey, what's most important to you and your team right now? And then you say the same thing to the next team and the next team, and all of them have different priorities, there tends to be a lack of urgency and disalignment in values. When you have disalignment in values, we can go back to the first one, people just don't have unity in what they're doing. They don't, and potentially it just tends to be that we haven't communicated enough, we haven't made it clear. I think a lot of times leaders like to sound complex. The more complex you sound, what ends up happening is people don't understand you. Clarity is the point. We want to be able to speak with clarity of what is most important right now. I'm working with a couple startups. One of the startups that we've consistently said the most important thing right now is revenue. That is the most important thing. So if it doesn't revolve around that, it's probably not the best time. It's not the best time to ideate or start something new that we know isn't going to produce revenue. Because why? That's what's most important right now. For you, you have to be able to produce urgency in the right things and give people permission to not think and solve and do the things that aren't focused around that. Good leaders can communicate something. Great leaders obviously produce clarity, and asking yourself this question, to be honest, is going to help your leader, your team so much of what is most important to me right now. Potentially it's your health. Potentially it's a new habit or a discipline that you've been wanting to achieve and consistently feeling like you just can't make it happen. Why? It's not important to you over something else in your life. Because again, what is on your calendar, what you prioritize tends to be what you're defining as most important right now. And again, sometimes we just don't have an efficient calendar or we don't understand, but that doesn't mean time doesn't stop. Time doesn't stop for you. The days don't stop coming for you, the hours, the minutes. Every other organization and team and business and leader is asking themselves this question: what is most important right now to me and to our organization? And then that second question, that follow-up with this, is what values do we need to succeed? This is always an interesting one, especially when you think about the context of church, because we love values. We love talking about values. We love sharing values. And again, I'm a proponent of, yes, we should absolutely have values. We should absolutely know what we are and what we are not. And something that I want to make clear, though, is values are not aspirational. Values are not what we're seeking to become. Values are who we are. If you have a value of community, we're not aspiring someday to have a place of community. What you're defining is what's already in the culture. That's what a value is. It's defined characteristics or a unified nature of a team or a group of people. That's a value. A value is a reality check, but then also just a reality. It is literally what you value. Think of it as an individual. I could say I have a value of my relationship with God, but if I don't spend time with Him, if I don't read my Bible, if I don't pray, if I don't give, if I don't serve, if I'm not in community, if I'm not attending church, I don't value it. And again, it's not aspirational. I have to introspective look at my life and ask myself, am I doing this? So that second question is, what's most important right now? And what values do we need to succeed? Number 3, where are we manufacturing energy or pretending to be excited? And why? So this is something that I believe is super important as a leader, is just authenticity. Can we please just be authentic? You have to be transparent and authentic to be a really great leader. Transparency and authenticity, when those collaborate, what ends up happening is people just are comfortable in their own skin because they know you're comfortable in yours. The people who are not, it tends to make people feel uneasy, or people just have that gut feeling or discernment of saying, being who you really are supposed to be, or you're being disingenuine, which tends to make people a little bit more rebellious towards you as a person. So, where are we manufacturing energy or pretending to be excited? This is an interesting one because, especially in the church, we like to have aspirational excitement or what we would just call faith. We're going to have faith for blank. But what ends up happening is if we don't have some sort of framework, if we don't have a timeline, if we don't have any sort of trackable data, we're implementing this last 3 months SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and trackable, because we don't want to just manufacture energy. We don't want to just pretend to be excited about things that aren't trackable, aren't specific, aren't realistic. And because again, aspirations and believing for God to do something absolutely is important. It's a core principle of what we do when we build a church. We're partnering with God and believing He's going to provide a miracle. He's going to do something exceedingly abundantly, anything we can ask, think, or imagine. 100%. That does not mean everything has equal weight when we talk about that. So potentially there's something that hasn't worked for years in your organization, but there just tends to be somebody or someone who is saying, we have to keep doing this. What ends up happening, in my opinion, or what I've seen, is that tends to be an idol in somebody's life. They can't get rid of it. They can't let it go because they've attached their personality, their title, their perception of other people looking at them, and that tends to be where people manufacture energy. And when I ask that question, where are you manufacturing energy or pretending to be excited in your ministry, in your team, in your any business, whatever, you already know. Yeah, there it is. And because why? There tends to be more opposition than people for it. And there just tends to be manufactured passion. Like I said, people don't really get excited about. There's not a defaulted energy towards it. When you post about it, there's not really a lot of excitement. That does not mean we do stuff out of that. Because the reality is there are things that we're going to have to do that potentially doesn't have energy or passion on it. But again, passion isn't about volume, about screaming, about jumping up and down. Passion is a conviction. And most of the time, if we actually would just put our lives around the things that God has highlighted that we should be putting our energy towards, which is loving people, serving people, building the local church, giving sacrificially, all of the core tenets of our faith, tends to be, one, a reality check of people who don't actually have a connection to the vine, but then two, you get to actually see what real passion looks like, because life change produces passion, transformation produces passion. Those are the things that we're going to be looking for, not the things that we just feel like we have to do because that's what everybody else does. Number 4, who needs to be sitting at the table and who doesn't? We know this because we say this every episode. Your first step as a leader is to get the right people on the bus. Your second step is to get people in the right seat on the bus, because leadership is less about who is where we're going. It's more about who's on that bus. So who needs to not be at the table? Who is completely rebelling against the values and mission of who we are? Who tends to, again, have a lot of manufactured energy around? Who tends to cause disunity or frustration or just honestly not carrying their weight? And that's okay. There is a table for them. It just might not be specifically that one. And who needs to be sitting at the table? Who is rising up? Who's stepping up like never before? Because those people are the people who are going to continue to build the thing that you believe God's called you to do. The right people are contributing, and we need to clarify roles. Again, clarity is king. Who needs to be sitting at the table and who doesn't? If you are perpetually upset or fearful of people being upset at, you're potentially not a leader, because genuinely love this person so much that I'm willing to risk the relationship with them. When you are in that state of mind, when you're understanding, I care more about who you're becoming than who you are today, you are going to have to challenge people. You are going to have to push people. You are going to ask people to step away from that table. Because again, it's okay. Some people there might have been a seasonal life change, or there's something that happened, and that's okay. We want to walk with them. We want to be their friend. I'm not saying don't be their friend. What I'm saying is make sure they're in the right seat. Or if they're not supposed to be on the bus, we just have to be okay with them not being on the bus. The best cultures spit out toxic people. The best cultures produce a level in which that somebody wants to come in and change something, or they want the whole world to revolve around them. It just tends to not work with really healthy organizations and teams. Number 5, what have I fallen in love with that really needs to change? Again, you're married to a method. There's something that isn't working. Maybe there's a blind spot. You're resisting change in some area because you believe it's working when it's simply not. Because again, it needs to be specific. You need to have some sort of measurable. You need to make sure it's attainable, realistic, and trackable. When you have all of those and you can actually see green, not red, and that gives you permission to go, we're going to keep trying this. But if it's been in the red, if it's been declined, nobody wants to be a part of it. You just need to let it go. Because why? Anything that you're unwilling to let go is an idol in your life. If you're not a Christian, what that means is you're worshiping it. You believe that is your God because it gives you passion, it gives you purpose, it gives you zeal, it gets you excited in the day, and it's not fulfilling. It's a consistent loop. That is an idol, and one way or another, that will be stripped from you, I promise you. Like we've said before, if the horse is dead, dismount. You're not going anywhere. You're sitting on a dead horse. Get off of it because there's another horse. There's another idea. There's another download from heaven that God wants to give you. But we're just so married to methods, and we don't have people in our lives who can just be brutally honest with us. That's what's going to end up happening, is we're going to fall in love with things that aren't loving us back because it's just a thing. It's just a method. It's just a mere idea or strategy that we don't get married to. I don't get married to methods. I get married to the message of Jesus, the message of life change. Those are the things that I'm consistently saying, this is staying. I don't care how we get here. We can nix or get rid of the how, but the why stays. So what have I fallen in love with that really needs to change? Number 6, what am I doing now that I need to stop? And where do I make the greatest contribution? Again, you need to evaluate energy. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. You need to look at the energy. Are you manufacturing energy? Are you manufacturing a sense of passion or priorities in your life that just tend to not be working? So what am I doing now that I need to stop? This doesn't have to be so crazy big, right? This doesn't have to be something that is a massive organizational shift. This might just be a basic habit in your life. What am I doing now that I need to stop? Maybe you need to stop eating out so much. Maybe you need to stop spending a lot of money. Maybe you need to stop thinking about somebody that left and it just keeps producing bitterness. Maybe you need to, again, whatever the Holy Spirit speaks to you is usually the thing that he's just saying stop. And maybe this is the point of the episode, is for somebody, I believe the Holy Spirit will speak to you and say, you need to stop. You need to stop comparing yourself. You need to stop having false ambition towards being on a platform. You need to stop whatever it is. It's important to know. And then where am I going to make my greatest contribution? And I would recommend and submit this to you as a listener of this podcast. You need to make your greatest contribution to your home and then to the church. Those are the two areas where you can make the greatest contribution. And obviously in your vocation, wherever you work. Those 3 categories, you need to figure out what you need to stop doing and what you need to start doing to produce the greatest contribution and impact in those 3 areas. Maybe you need to stop being so stingy. Maybe you need to stop staying up so late and go to bed. Again, it tends to be more practical than not. Because again, we just need to get dialed in. We need to get dialed in. There's too much ahead. There's too much that God has in front of us for us to be sitting in and living in loops and living in a life that you never wanted to live, because again, you're just not honest with yourself. And you can't be honest with others until you're honest with yourself. You need to evaluate your energy. Okay, so your energy levels, your physical, your mental energy, your spiritual energy. Maybe you feel fatigued. You don't have any healthy ambition to spend time with Jesus. Maybe your priorities are out of whack. You are spending way too much time at work and not with your family, or maybe you are investing too much into other people and not yourself. Again, what am I doing now that I need to stop? And where do I need to make the greatest contribution? I'm just pleading with you that the greatest contribution you're going to make in 2025 is going to be in your home, in your family, in your church, because those are the places where you're going to get the highest return on your investment, and God's commanded you to. God has commanded you to have your greatest contribution. Don't be successful at your job or successful online and not be successful at home. That isn't even a Christian thing. That's a basic humanity thing. You don't have to be a Christian to believe that statement. And again, it just takes a level of honesty. And I would submit to you to talk to a leader, talk to a friend, talk to your spouse on that of, man, where do you think I need to stop doing things, and where do you think I can make my greatest contribution in 2025? Last question. What would a great leader do in my position? The greatest leader, close your eyes and think about the greatest leader. Maybe it was a pastor in your life. Maybe it was a CEO that you look up to. What would they do if they were in your position? We've heard this. We all have the WWJD's bracelets, but man, what would the greatest leader, yes, Jesus, but also somebody that's lived and you've seen and walked with in life, what would a great leader do in my position? This is supposed to inspire you. This is supposed to produce boldness in you. And the greatest place you can live as a leader is forward thinking. So what would a great leader do? If maybe you're thinking about a job change, what would a great leader do? Maybe you have to restructure your organization or your team. What would a great leader do? A great leader would do this. They would consistently look at what is working and what is not working. A great leader would constantly make sure other people's voices are heard at the table. And you don't have to be the leader at the table to make sure other people feel heard, by the way. If you want to be the best leader in every single room you ever walk in, this is how you do it. You become a great listener and you become a great defender of people in rooms where you're not the primary leader. There's somebody else talking up a storm because they think that's how you're a leader. By the way, the person who talks the most and is the loudest is usually the quietest internally. They're the most insecure. I have countless stories of being in meetings where I'm like, that guy is so insecure. And the point of this is, what I'm saying is, a great leader contends for people, fights for people, has alignment, because alignment determines assignment. You can have the coolest ambition, the coolest assignment, but if there's no alignment in the room, it's just a mere dream, not a reality. Where's the manufactured energy in my life? Those are the things great leaders do. Great leaders fight for people and are always pointing it back to why we exist and how each individual person contend and align their actions with the purpose. So I'm going to read these 7 questions again. I hope one of these challenged you, encouraged you. As we go into 2025, we're going to make the best possible impact going in and going. We're not going back. 2025 is going to be one of the best years. I believe it's going to be the best year yet. Number 1, why do we exist and how am I aligning my actions with that purpose? When the why is high, the cost is low. Number 2, what is most important right now and what values do we need to succeed? Number 3, where are we manufacturing energy or pretending to be excited? We absolutely have to be authentic in 2025. Who needs to be sitting at the table and who doesn't? Let's make sure the right people are on the bus and the wrong people are off the bus. Number 5, what have I fallen in love with that really needs to change? You got a blind spot. Bring people in your life to be honest with you. Number 6, what am I doing now that I need to stop, and where do I make the greatest contribution? Evaluate your energy, evaluate your priorities. Again, our greatest contribution 2025 is going to be in our homes. And number 7, what would a great leader do in my? Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Conversations. 2025 was such a great year. I just got the YouTube recap, and I believe we're almost hit over 2 million views just on YouTube alone. Just absolutely incredible. I'm so thankful for each and every one of you. Make sure to like, subscribe. Let's make sure 2025 is going to be the best year yet for Conversations, for your life, for every single one of us listening, just believing it absolutely will be our best year yet. Again, thank you so much.